Good evening to everyone. Welcome.
Good evening.
My name's Bill Spangle, one of the associate teachers here, along with Zopa Heron, assisted this evening by the able Bob Wilson at Omze, chant master for the evening. And welcome to anyone who's here. It's hard to tell with the silhouettes whether I've met you or not. Some people, oh yes, that's who that is. Right. Welcome. For those who are not familiar, we'll sit for about 50 minutes with a few formal interruptions where it's the official time to reset posture, reset the meditation, but any time that it's useful to you, you can do the same. You don't need to wait in the spiral of agony and anxiety about maybe doing the wrong thing. You can adjust your posture whenever you need. So we do want everybody to feel at home and comfortable. The practice that we do is unfortunately too simple. In the midst of all the things that we go on in our mind streams, there's rarely any space to just meet exactly what's arising without being caught or trapped. Now, if we took a poll, we would probably find, at least in this poll, not a polarized result. If you asked the question, do you prefer to be trapped or not? Probably the answer is going to be a lot of check marks in the, I think I prefer not to be trapped. But when we look at how we react to what arises in our experience, what arises in our memory, it appears actually when the closer we look, the more it looks like we're actually have our thumb on the side of the scale for continuing to be trapped, continuing to be held within the cycles of habit patterns. So we should just stop that, right? But it takes quite a while to become sufficiently familiar and intimate with what arises in our mind stream so that we actually see how it is that we hold on to our own entrapment, sustain that, how we sustain that. And it also takes time and some careful, gentle reflection to see what it is, the disadvantages of actually being trapped and the advantages of possibly not being trapped. This actually takes some reflection to look, to see what it is that we rely on that's actually helpful, that allows us to increase the degrees of freedom that we might experience within our relationship to all the things that go on in our life and in our minds, to see what's reliable to increase that and what we might let go of that actually, you could say, enhances or sustains the being lost in our habits, being trapped by our habits. It takes some time. If we were really, really careful, we might, without any further instruction or suggestions, be able to unravel absolutely everything from what I've just said or something similar to it, just by looking more and more carefully at our experience and reflecting and with more care, contemplating deeply what's going on. But it does help to have some examples for how to do it. It helps to have, you could say, a cheat sheet. And the Buddha is an example of one who actually did see how to be in the realm of this experience and not be trapped. And the Dharma is, you could say, the cliff notes for how to not be trapped. There's some suggestions that can accelerate our progress. And if we have friends who are also seriously interested in the same question, in the same endeavor, then we also have something else that we can rely on. So there we would have the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, or the community, our colleagues on the path, who offer some kind of reliable assistance. So we always begin our practice with refuge, reminding ourselves in whatever point we are in our practice, whether we're just barely familiar with any of the terminology and only have maybe just a gut sense of what it is that we want to attempt. Or we've been working at it for a long time and we think we know with some great sophistication exactly what we're up to and how it all works and all that. Wherever we are, whenever we begin our practice, we begin with this reminder of going for refuge, turning our minds away from the habits that sustain entrapment, and turning our minds towards those things that we can cultivate that open our hearts and our minds to deeper potential. And one of the simplest things that we can do along with this basic turning of our attention is to remind ourselves that we are not really so special in terms of being the only one who is entrapped. We have a huge amount of company in this regard. And if we turn our attention away from our own self-absorption and open our hearts just that one move is a huge step towards finding some freedom from the entrapment and all the habit patterns. Because one of the deepest, perhaps the deepest habit pattern that we have is to hold ourselves and all that arises in our experience, to hold that as central and to fixate on it and to try to puff it up, try to protect it. To hold on to some sense of identity and specialness. In relaxing in a gentle, open-hearted way, and actually beginning to include others, is very potent. It's a way to meet experience in a very different way. A way to meet others in a very different way. A way that's not fundamentally fixated. So we begin our practice with these reminders, turning our mind to refuge and cultivating our potential to really connect with others, to open our hearts,
until the summit of enlightenment is reached, I and all beings go for refuge to the sources of true refuge. I will now practice the absorption of calm abiding in order to release all being from their particular suffering and establish them in lasting peace and happiness. Until the summit of enlightenment is reached, I and all beings go for refuge to the sources of true refuge. I will now practice the absorption of calm abiding in order to release all beings from their particular suffering and establish them in lasting peace and happiness. Until the summit of enlightenment is reached, I and all beings go for refuge to the sources of true refuge. I will now practice the absorption of calm abiding in order to release all beings from their particular suffering and establish them in lasting peace and happiness.
To find deep freedom, it is essential to be able to let go of to let go of, stop putting energy into the habit patterns of entrapment. And to do this, it's essential to become intimately familiar with our own experience. Not familiar in the sense of having a lot of ideas and sophistication and being able to explain it to ourselves, but just intimately familiar with experience as it arises. When we become intimately familiar with our experience, it's possible to relax with that. To let go of any need to do something about it. To simplify this, we may settle the attention on the flow of experiences that come with the breath, going in, going out. Placing this flow of experience in the center of our awareness. Whenever we discover that our habit of being entrapped has led us to chase after something and become lost in thoughts and memories or plans, we simply rediscover the vivid moment-to-moment flow of experience. And relax into it.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thank you all for a nice meditation session. A medley of reminders, hopefully done in less time than it took for a medley to go through an old 45 RPM record. And then we'll have some time for tea or whatever snacks happen to be down. What's that? Cold water. Cold water, yes. Yeah, perhaps to pour over your head, I don't know. This Tuesday, for those who are interested in the Tara practice, there will be Tara practice at 7 o'clock. They'll go through the practice and using the tune as suggested by Lama Eric that he got from the Mirik Monastery chant master. And Lama Michael said that he would be participating that evening, so that's getting started. And then again, Thursday, continuing with the mind training. That's continuing on. This Saturday, the Ngondro practice, that part of the Ngondro practice it's going to be reviewed is the Mandala practice, and that's part of that series on exploring the path of Mahamudra. So if you have questions about that, you can talk to me, 9:30 to noon, and then again, short session after lunch, or not a medium session after lunch to go through the details of the practice. And then rolling on out to the future, the principle I would point out here is you should always make an effort to figure out how to part the waves of your life, part the ocean of your life, so that there's space for retreat. And since Lama Eric will be coming back in September to lead 2 retreats, one on mainly more focused on insight, so this is a really good opportunity for people who've been practicing for some time. We don't usually have this opportunity to go into it in that level. That's one, and also an introduction. It's not just an introduction to Chenrezig practice, but it will be a very good opportunity for those who wish to develop a connection with that practice and go deeper into it. And then in November, the mind training / Tonglen retreat with Lama Michael. So whether you do these retreats or not, could have just think how much energy and forethought it takes to part a space of several days or a week. It's not easy, but it can be done. It can be done. And it's good to think ahead and to put some energy into figuring out how that can happen, because a lot of things that can happen on a period of several days where you really set aside other things in your life and really just concentrate on the practice, settle into that. Very different things can happen in that container, and that can allow for a different kind of inspiration and confidence to come, and that will then inform your day-to-day practice as well. So a bit of encouragement on that front. I think that's it.
One short thing. Just was wondering for perhaps the opportunity, if anyone wanted to offer service to the community, before we have our meditation time each Sunday evening, that if you have a little extra time to spend some time to be here to offer service if some things need cleaning or adjusting or things here, or perhaps even afterwards as OMS Day assistant, just putting things away and getting the center closed up afterwards also. So if either of those sound like that they might speak to you, please just let me know, or let Linda Grove know also, and that would be very good. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Everything that happens here actually happens due to magic. And that magic involves everybody. So it's good if you're part of the everybody and help the magic occur. So I think that's it for the moment.
Thank you.
I don't see any hands waving for additional reminders. So let's have a little break. For those who are not familiar with us and would like to say hello, please feel free to come up, introduce yourself to Zopa and Bill, and we'll be back 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
There's speakers downstairs, and we now had all set up. When you hear a little bell, I'll put the microphone in the bell, and you'll hear this odd noise coming out of the ether.
Yeah.
Know that that's time to come back up.
All right.